Those of you who recognize the Arthur Conan Doyle allusion here understand that as a trucker it's always important to prove that you've read a book, or at least a short story. And we'll get back to the 70% solution in just a moment. I do want to take a minute to explain the industry to you. I've had a few thoughts about how to best do that. One, for instance, is Flexner's the indispensable man. When it comes to logistics, when it comes to freight movement, trucking is the indispensable man. As Paige said, we're a huge percentage of the freight bill every year, and we always will be. We deliver it on time, we deliver it wherever it needs to go, and we're the connection between every other mode. That's the important thing, and one of the important things. But in a good description of the trucking industry, it suddenly dawned on me that the best description from the outside looking in is probably that of a 4-year-old soccer game. If they're not just kind of wandering around on their own, then they're all chasing in one direction. And that's often what the trucking industry appears to be like. We're a commoditized industry. That is, there are 600,000 trucking companies in this country. And so when we start to work, it can either look like a totally disjointed effort, or it can look like everyone in the industry is chasing the same freight. I can assure you neither is exactly right. The industry is very technologically advanced, very coordinated, and incredibly efficient. But let me touch on a few highlights about our state issues here. First of all, as Todd just told you, one of the things we're proud of in Georgia is that the infrastructure in this state is good. Georgia regularly ranks not only in the CNBC surveys, as the governor mentioned, but in the road improvement program and in other surveys as one of the top, if not the top road system in the country. That's important in a variety of reasons, and it's important because it lowers the cost of moving freight. Quality roads help us do our job better, they help move freight better, and they help us in this effort to grow logistics. They are good, they're great, but of course, anytime you've got that much in the way of asphalt assets on the ground, you've got maintenance expenses that only grow, and you have a need for expansion. And I'll tell you that as an industry, we take that seriously. One of the things we've done as an industry is develop a plan that we're working, hopefully with the governor's office and with the legislature on, to put more money into the development of the road system here in Georgia. More money from the trucking industry so that we can keep a good freight system going. Which leads to the second point. One of our state issues is taxation. Taxes predate the trucking industry, and the methodologies of taxes often predate the developments in the industry. And we're working with the legislature, and the Georgia legislature is doing a better and better job of this. The governor's office understands it, that we need a taxation in the state to match the industry's needs. We often point out that if you tax rolling stock the wrong way, it simply rolls away. We want the trucking industry to be based here in the state of Georgia, and we're working on that. The legislature has made some changes this year. There are more to come, so that the industry can pay the taxes it needs to pay and do it in a simple way that doesn't skew business decisions. And I'm very proud to tell you that Georgia is a state that gets it, and the leadership of the state is working with us to develop that. The same goes for the bureaucracy. Again, it just needs an update. Budget cuts have a lot of good sides to them. Some of the bad sides is that the departments don't get to stay up with technology. They don't get to keep up with the changes that are in the industries they have to work with. We're making progress there as well. And I think by this time next year we'll be able to tell you that the Georgia departments are easier and smoother to work with. Simpler systems make everyone look smarter. They make the transactions easier, and again, they help smooth the freight flow. Obviously, Savannah is a key issue for us. The Port of Savannah is of major importance. It's of major importance to our industry. Not a few containers come through the Port of Savannah, and pretty soon, probably most of anywhere on the East Coast, if we're not already there, and possibly more than anywhere else in the nation. And I'll let someone else give you the details on that. But if they come into the port, we have to be able to get them out of the port. And that's where continued improvement in infrastructure and continued working between the trucking industry and the ports industry comes into play. We have national level issues too that we're dealing with. This has been a slow recovery. It has been an uneven recovery. There are some areas of the industry that are doing extremely well. There are some areas that need continued change and need some continued growth. Part of that is the regulatory burden. The economist Noel Perry of FTR Associates is one of the few that specializes in trucking, and he's made the point that in this recovery, the regulatory burden on the industry is probably 50 to 80% higher than any time in history. And in his reckoning, that accounts for 300,000 fewer trucks on the road at this point than there would be in a normal recovery. That is an issue. along with that issue is the regulatory uncertainty. Now, I'm not here to discuss whether any individual regulation is good or bad, but simply the volume of regulation and the uncertainty that is caused by that makes it difficulty or is an issue for us as an industry. For instance, just yesterday, the courts heard, again, appeals on the hours of service issue. Now, if you understand the trucking industry and the limited hours available, you understand how important it is for us to utilize our assets properly, to understand how those assets can be deployed and how truck drivers can do their work. That did not change for the first 60 years of trucking. When hours of service went in the 1930s, it remained fairly unchanged until the 1990s. In the last decade, it has changed at least 3 times and looking like it's changing for a 4th. That's a challenge for the industry, to understand how it's going to utilize assets and how it's going to hire people. Infrastructure throughout the nation is really not that bad in many places. There are long stretches out west, there are long stretches of interstate between cities that are in great shape and can handle things. But there are issues and there are places where we're beyond capacity, and there needs to be a reckoning of that and dealing with that on a national level. And too often transportation issues are constrained by other political issues. So we need to continue to focus on that, and as Todd Long alluded, we need some greater funding clarity out of the federal level as well. That said, there are some real positives in this industry. American Trucking Association's economists predict that we'll see at least 100% growth over the next 10 years, or in a period from 2012 to 2022. And of that, Paige said 80%, we're not quite there, this is our 70%. All our estimates show that even though every mode will grow, and probably none as fast as rail intermodal, the trucking industry will continue to grow, and by the end of this 10-year period, we'll go from 67.5% of all the freight carried, measured by dollar, to 70% of all the freight carried. Truly the indispensable industry. But in all of that, we'll be partnering with rails, with intermodal, with the ports, and with others, as we all grow together. The positives out of that, too, of course, are we're a place for more jobs, more quality jobs for high school graduates, folks with clean records, and more quality jobs for college graduates as well. The industry is becoming increasingly high-tech, increasingly dedicated to total management of the assets, of how they're deployed, of the logistics involved in moving them properly. And so we're a real growth industry. We employ over 300,000 people in this state. We provide over $1 billion in tax revenue to this state right now, and that will only grow. We are all gaining, both state and industry, a greater understanding of the need for partnership together to grow together. This is a good positive for us. It's great to work with the leadership of the state of Georgia. They understand that, and they understand that growth is good for all the citizens of Georgia. And finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't note the promise that natural gas and oil shale have for this industry. It is still incredibly expensive to put a natural gas truck on the road, but the market is working, and those opportunities are coming. And I think 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we're going to see a different fleet mix. Diesel is incredibly efficient. There's a lot of energy density in the diesel, and there's a lot of efficiency to it, and it'll take a lot to switch the entire industry. I'm not saying that we should, but it would take a lot for the industry to make that kind of a change. But it's happened in the past, and there is a place for natural gas, and I think we're going to see that grow as time goes on. So with that, I hope I've teased you enough for questions, and I'll turn it over to our next speaker. Thank you.